Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books and I let you know what I thought about them, and we always start with the pick of the week. And this week's pick of the week, to nobody's surprise, is G.I. Joe! G.I. Joe, issue number 1. From Image Comics, Skybound to be particular. To be more specific, how about the Inner John universe? That's right, Joshua Williamson, Tom Riley, Jordie Bellaire, they are here and delivering G.I. Joe issue number 1, firmly set in the Inner John universe. There has been a little bit of a slow build into this series. We've had 4 miniseries, Cobra Commander and Duke. Duke, by the way, that creative team, that exact creative team here on the pages of G.I. Joe. Cobra Commander was great, Duke was solid, Destro was amazing, and Scarlet was alright, but now all those threads are coming together into the G.I. Joe comic book, and it did not disappoint. All the groundwork has been laid, and now it's ready just to go. So we start with a little bit of a training mission, then we start with a first official mission for Duke's new G.I. Joe team. It's got some interesting members. There's a new character that's introduced here named Risk. You see him on the cover right there. Cobra is in here. The whole conflict, the turmoil between Destro and Cobra Commander is still right there. A super solid book with some surprises and some really exciting bits. Tom Riley on the artwork is absolutely amazing. He's got a scintillating pace all throughout. It never lets off of the gas, never pumps on the brakes. Even in some of the slower moments, it has a breakneck pace that keeps you flipping the page to the very next one. And Jordie Bellaire's coloring, some of the techniques that she's been working with on Birds of Prey, for instance, I think are really coming to fruition here in the pages of G.I. Joe. Really solid artwork, really great color choices, a really great story, and Josh Williamson has been able to take these characters that are familiar to some, not familiar to others, and still make them relevant for today, intriguing for new readers, and appealing to old fans. G.I. Joe number 1, this is what it's like. This is what's up. One of the biggest launches of the year is here. We also got Transformers issue number 14, and what an issue of Transformers it was. So ever since the end of the second big arc, we've got these two little kind of self-contained, kind of a mini arc in and of themselves stories dealing with Starscream. In issue number 13, we got the backstory, the untold secret origin of Starscream. Here, you get a little bit of background information, but it's mostly where Starscream is now, who has found him, and how he's dealing with that, and it's setting up some really exciting Transformers comics to come. Jason Howard does a great job with the artwork of keeping that kinetic and high-energy vibe that has been established by artist and the writer Daniel Warren Johnson, and of course the other artist Jorge Corona. Corona is back on the next issue, but it was nice to have a 2-issue breather in between big arcs to really focus in on Starscream and set some stuff up, and Daniel Warren Johnson continues to do what he does best, which is make exciting, fun, and cool comics, but still have some kind of a story and character development and interesting stuff going on. The Inner John universe continues to amaze. Transformers number 14, no exception. Then we have Precious Metal issue number 6, the final issue of this Little Bird prequel from writer Darcy Van Polgeest and artist Ian Bertram. Hassan Otsman El Howe on the lettering, Matt Hollingsworth on the coloring. This book has been wild. It has been exciting. There was a long build for this book. It took a long time for this book, but every single moment of waiting was worth it. What a fantastic climatic conclusion to this series, tying all those threads together, plugging into the world of Little Bird even a little bit more. This has been, honestly, a very simple detective story gone awry, but it's in a world, highly imagined world, filled with insane, intricate artwork, great complex ideas that other writers would just take and develop a whole series around. But here, it's just set dressing to a core story that really comes to a great and dramatic and satisfying conclusion in the pages of Precious Metal issue number 6. I cannot wait now to reread every issue of Precious Metal in one sitting, and then probably go on right on to Little Bird. You know what I'm saying? Then we got Violator here with issue number 3 of 6. This is a 6-issue miniseries. Each issue is double-sized. They're written by Mark Andreyko with different artists on each issue. The artist here is John Waychak, and I really like the art. It's got a grit, it's got a texture, it's very appropriate for the character of Violator. So what we've been getting is the origin or the life story of Violator, if you will, through different pieces of his evolution. So the first issue, with great artwork by Piotr Kowalski, that was an amazing issue that was kind of like who Violator was as an angel first, right? And then he fell, and then we're dealing with that stuff in issue number 2. Issue number 3, we're dealing with it a little bit more. He's in the Middle Ages. He is coming up, and he runs into a familiar face, a familiar angelic face. It kind of throws him for a loop. The story got a little bit silly for me in issue number 2, or issue number 3. Not that 1 and 2 were ultra serious, but this one just had kind of an off vibe to it. I liked the art, but the story just really didn't completely gel with me. Let's jump over to DC, where we have Absolute Batman issue number 2. Scott Snyder, Nick Dragotta, Frank Martin. The book's alright. It's alright. I mean, I asked everybody. I was curious to hear what people thought about Absolute Batman number 1, because I felt like Absolute Batman number 1 had a bunch of dumb stuff in it, but also in a way that was kind of cool. This the same thing, right? You get more of the continuing adventures of this new Batman, and it's ridiculous. Some parts of this are absolutely, utterly ridiculous, but it's so awesome to me kind of because of that. But what really sells this book for me is the art by Nick Dragotta. I really love the layout, the composition, and the pacing of this. It's kind of got a manga meets Dark Knight Returns kind of influence, and it wears that influence on its bat sleeve, but it does it exceptionally well and is still uniquely Nick Dragotta. So a big fan of the artwork here. The story, I'm getting into it, I guess. Like, there's this element that, like, Bruce's friends are what we consider his rogues gallery. They kind of develop that just a little bit. We get a little bit more into who this Bruce Wayne is, and it's interesting enough. And you get the introduction of the Absolute Batmobile, which I think a lot of people are going to think is absolutely stupid, and a lot of people are going to think is absolutely awesome. I mean, I don't know if you're going to be one way or another on this book. I guess I'm kind of one way. Like, it's stupid, but it's kind of fun because it's so stupid and big and obnoxious in a way. Does that make sense? I'm not saying this is a super great book or it's like elevated in some kind of way, but I kind of have fun with it. Comic books should be what? Fun, especially superhero mainstream comics. So there you go. We also got another printing of Absolute Batman number 1. This is the Noir edition, where you're going to get the original black and white artwork from Nick Dragotta. I highly recommend this if you're interested in just masterful art techniques and being able to see it more clearly. Really great edition of Absolute Batman number 1. All right. Then we got Black Lightning issue number 1, a new Black Lightning series from Brandon Thomas and Fico Osio. It was all right. It was okay. So post Absolute Power, now that many of the superheroes in the DC universe have gotten their powers back, some have gotten them back wrong, and some haven't gotten them back at all, including one of Black Lightning's kids. She hasn't gotten her powers back, and that's kind of a point here. Her sister still has her powers. Jefferson's trying to learn like a new, he's trying to start something new, like be a more proactive superhero, try to stop problems before they start. It's tied in with what's going on with Justice League Unlimited and all that jazz. It was all right. It was decent. If you're a Black Lightning fan, definitely check it out. But I don't know if this is the book that will turn you into a Black Lightning fan. Black Lightning fans, what's the run to read to turn somebody into a Black Lightning fan? Let us know in the comments down below. Then we've got Batman and Robin, issue number 15. Pretty solid issue of Batman and Robin. I really, really love the art here. The art is Fernandez. First name is, I'm sure I will find out. But the story is really cool. There's like a mysterious killer from Batman's past that shouldn't be around, but is around, plaguing Damian and Bruce. They're having to figure this stuff out. The artwork is really solid throughout this book. Who is the artist? It is something Fernandez. It is Javi Fernandez. Yeah, Javi Fernandez, Philip Kennedy Johnson on the story. DC All In, we're like in the second month of DC All In, and so far I'm pretty impressed. Batman and Robin number 15, another solid issue. Then we have Action Comics 1075. This is going to be monthly, at least, I believe, through this whole Phantom story or whatever. It's going to be weekly, and then it's going to drop back to monthly or something with a new creative team. That's what I've heard, what I've been able to dig out. But Action Comics 1075, still another cool issue. I don't think it should be weekly. I'm tired of saying that because it's a good comic. I really like it. This is an exercise celebratory milestone issue, 1075, right? So it has the main Phantom story. And in the story, Superman's been flung back into time to Krypton. We've seen that before. And we've seen it done similar to this. But it's still working for me. I like the art. I like the Superboy and the new Superman story. Then you got a Supergirl story, and I'm kind of falling in and out of it. It's like all right, but it's just, you get little bits here and there. Then at the end, there's a big story about Perry White and his running for mayor. It's election day. So if you want to know the results of the Metropolis mayoral campaigns, read Action Comics 1075. Then we got Green Lantern here with issue number 17. Jeremy Adams has been doing a really great job, a consistent job on the Hal Jordan book. And Philip Kennedy Johnson set up some really interesting stuff in the Jon Stewart book by way of, which was a Green Lantern War Journal, right? All of those threads are now coming together into this big story. The villains have made their big moves. All these surprises have happened. And now it's like upping the scale, upping the stakes, and just making something truly dire with epic consequences for our heroes. Our heroes have to reform some ideas, reform some things. I'm liking the pages of Green Lantern right now. Jeremy Adams' run has been really solid for 17 plus issues. Plus you add in all the Philip Kennedy Johnson stuff, all the setup that led to this. Pretty solid work, so I think it's good. Then we got Batman Dark Age issue number 6 from Mark Russell and, of course, Michael Allred and Laura Allred. Whenever the Allreds are on a project, I am going to check it out. This was a masterpiece. What's interesting is that so many people who have been working in comics, artists, for decades, right? You see a little bit of a dip in the quality of their work, you know, as they age, maybe their eyes, maybe their control, maybe some stuff changes. How in the heck does Mike Allred and Laura Allred just stay improving? They've just been on a steady, like a steady improvement and evolution their entire careers. So I love the art, and the story's pretty cool too. An interesting take on the Batman mythos, kind of tied into Superman Space Age, and maybe a setup for another one to come. But it was really cool conclusion. I was very satisfied with it, and I'll read any book that Mike Allred and Laura Allred are on. So there you go. Then we got Batman, Gotham by Gaslight, the Kryptonian Age, issue number 6. And yes, in fact, this is the last issue. But don't worry, next spring, the next part of this story is coming out to make a Gotham by Gaslight trilogy, if you will. This was a really solid conclusion. One of the interesting things about Gotham by Gaslight, the Kryptonian Age, is I thought that this would just introduce Superman and maybe another concept or two. Nope. We get thrown right into the Batman Rogues Gallery, right into the formation of what will be the Justice League, right? And I am shocked at how much I still enjoy this book. This book is called Batman Gotham by Gaslight. This book is not about Batman. Batman's a part of it, but it's about all these new heroes. You got Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, you got Superman. All these different ideas are being interpreted in the Victorian lens of Gotham by Gaslight. So even though it's just a Batman book in name only, it's still awesome. And I really like this world, and I really like this expansion of this world, and I'm very excited to see what's to come. It does suck that we got to wait a few months and that this series is over, but another series is coming. But it's going to be worth the wait because this was really interesting, cool stuff. All right. Another Elseworlds books we got is DC vs. Vampires, World War V, issue number 4. And this was the lull so far in the series. Now, I still have never finished the first DC vs. Vampires, but I was intrigued from issue number 1 and 2 of this one, and issue number 3 was solid too. Issue number 4, though, pulls the story back a little bit. It gets a little explaining, a little overly exposition-y. And not that exposition's a bad thing. In fact, for PCP Movie Night, we just talked about Back to the Future. That's pretty much a movie filled with exposition, but it works. and it works so well and it never feels boring. This starts to get a little bit dull at times, but it does kind of pick it back up towards the end. It's not anything that's putting me off of this book. It was just a little bit of a what's the reverse of a hump? I don't know. A dump? I don't know, but it was all right. It was all right. All right, let's jump over to Marvel. And from Marvel, we have Psylocke issue number 1, a brand new miniseries focusing in on everybody's favorite purple-haired mutant ninja in the Marvel Universe. I grew up a big Psylocke fan. Most of us kids that were like 10 to 13 in the early 90s, we loved this for some Psylocke for various reasons. I wasn't looking forward to this book because I haven't really liked a lot of the new X-Men books, but I really liked Psylocke issue number 1. I thought this was really good. I thought it was a really solid book. Really solid issue. Had a great pace to it. The art is decent. It's like basically your typical, what would be considered, I guess, your typical Marvel house style nowadays, but it's got flair, it's got energy, it had a nice flow to it. The story, the dialogue was solid, the pacing, the setup of the story, it's pretty dope. It's basically Cyclops forces Psylocke to take a forced vacation. Of course, that leads her to go and try to free some kids being sold into slavery. And it's just hijinks, and it's fun. It's a book that's not... It's not like super tongue-in-cheek, but it's not taking itself too seriously, but it is taking itself seriously enough with what it is. It's got some great action. The character of Psylocke is spot on. I really dig it. I really liked it. I'm excited for issue number 2. I cannot believe that. I also cannot believe... Well, I can if you can think about it because it's a new team. I'm reading Amazing Spider-Man again. So issue number 61 is here to kick off the 8 deaths of Spider-Man. This is the introduction of the new team, at least for a time. Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness. Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness, they do great work together. They did really solid work on Deadpool back in the day in the 90s. Joe Kelly has a really solid run on Action Comics in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I'm a fan of Joe Kelly. I'm a fan of Ed McGuinness. They're on Spider-Man. Let's check it out. Ed McGuinness has been on Spider-Man, and I've liked his work there. I just didn't really like this Zeb Wells run. So this is not the Zeb Wells run. Now it's a new opportunity for us to get back into what should be Marvel's flagship book, and it is. And you see Dr. Doom on the cover, and the basic premise of the story is this. For some reason that I'm not going to spoil it, but for some reason, Dr. Doom, who is now the Sorcerer Supreme of the Marvel Universe, comes up to Spider-Man and says, I need you, out of every other hero, to defend the Earth in against some kind of threat. And in order to empower you to do so, I'm going to give you a new suit of armor, I'm going to imbue you with magical powers, and gift you with 8 lives. So it's the 8 deaths of Spider-Man. Spider-Man's probably going to die like 8 times. It's probably one of those kind of things, right? Really cool setup. Really cool issue. Artwork was great. The setup was cool. You know, the idea of the story sounds pretty silly. But comic books can be silly. They can be silly. They can be fun. This was good. It had a nice, like, bouncy feel to it, which I think Spider-Man books should. Peter's the lovable loser. Spider-Man's, like, the cool hero. You got some really great artwork from Ed McGuinness and the others. Like, I think Mark Farmer is doing his inking. But it's really solid stuff. I liked it. I liked it a lot, and it surprised me. I knew that I would probably like it, but I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did. I loved the hell out of this issue of Amazing Spider-Man. So there you go. More of this. I'm going to keep reading. All right, then we got the Uncanny X-Men issue number 5. This has been an X-Men book that I've thought has been pretty freaking solid. I think Gail Simone's doing a great job of taking some of my favorite X-Men characters, Wolverine and Jubilee and Nightcrawler, and taking 2 characters that I've never really liked that much, especially together, Rogue and Gambit, and making me really like this X-Men team. This is a really solid team. Great artwork by David Marquez. The story, this is kind of like the finale of this first arc, when it ends in such an exceptional way that really gets into the character of Rogue, but still also gets to highlight and spotlight not just this team of X-Men, but some of these newer mutants who they have come across in the most recent issues, right? I'm digging it. I like the art. I like the vibe. I like the flavor. This feels like X-Men comics to me, and I'm all here for it. Keep making them like this. I'm going to keep reading it. It's a good day when Marvel's got Amazing Spider-Man and Uncanny X-Men on the shelf, and they both are pretty rocking. All right, then we got Ultimate X-Men issue number 9. I liked this issue of Ultimate X-Men. You know, in the last issue, I felt like I was kind of becoming slightly disconnected from the story. This one pulled me right back in. The idea of the children of the atom and this like cult of mutants, right? Now mutants are outed and people are finding out about them. Now this is starting to feel more like an X-Men comic. Now I do love the work of Peach Momoko. I think she's got some great artwork. I think she's got some decent storytelling chops. And I really like this interesting and unique and different approach to the X-Men. But now it really is starting to feel more like an X-Men comic. Not quite like an Uncanny X-Men, but an Ultimate X-Men, like a Peach Momoko X-Men. And it feels like the world that these X-Men should belong in. I really like this book. I think it's super solid. From Dark Horse, we got a new one called Arcbound, issue number 1. This is an idea that was developed, or at least partially developed, by Tom Hardy. So that's pretty cool. So character development by Tom Hardy and Ryan Smallman. And this is written by Scott Snyder and Frank Thierry. And we got artwork by... Oh, Ryan Smallman is the artist. My bad. Ryan Smallman is the artist. I liked this story. Like, used to be, if Tom Hardy and Scott Snyder were working on a book together, we'd all be talking about this. This was not on my radar. I guess I just haven't been paying that much attention. But it's a world in which humans have left Earth, and now they go to other planets, and they have to mine them for some kind of element that they need that's essential for survival. And the way they do that is to just go and terrorize this planet and force them to give up by killing a bunch of people and turning some of the others into robots. They transfer their consciousness into robots to mine for them. It's really heinous, right? And one of the dudes who does this enforcing for them comes to the realization that, this ain't good what we do, right? But it was a really solid book. It had a great pace to it. The dialogue was spot on. The artwork was really, really cool. It's got a nice, like, energetic quality to it, but it still shows and lets you feel the weight of the situation, right? The gravity of everything. I thought this was a really well-developed concept and a really executed comic. Arcbound number 1, that's like sleeper hit of the week material right there. All right, then we've got Black Hammer, Spiral City, issue number 1. Black Hammer is back. So Black Hammer just finished the end, in which the anti-god came in. They had this final big thing, and that was the end of the Black Hammer stuff, right? But it's back. Black Hammer Spiral City. How's it back? And I was like, even though I haven't read the last few Black Hammer series, can I jump into this and just enjoy it? Yes, absolutely, you can. And yes, I've read a bunch of Black Hammer before, so I have an idea of the story. It didn't matter. This, in a very expert way, fills you in on everything you need to know and sets up a really cool story that's going to wind up being a detective murder mystery. I really like this world, this darker version of Spiral City, post of everything that has happened in the pages of Black Hammer. Humanity is now turning against their superheroes. They're forcing them all to live in this one town called Super Town or something like that. It's got a great melancholical feel to it. It's got really great pace to it. It's just a really solid story. So even if you've never read any Black Hammer before, I think you can jump in right here, start fresh, and just enjoy a really great superhero-infused detective murder story. Also from Dark Horse, we have Helen of Windhorn, issue number 6, the final issue. So last month, I think on the monthly comic book review, we were talking about this book and like, there's only like one more issue. How are you going to tie all this stuff up together? Can Tom King pull it off? Answer, yes. Tom King can pull it off. This was a fantastic, splendid, spectacularly awesome issue of Helen of Windhorn. This is going down as one of the best series of 2024 for sure. Anchored by Bill Key Evely on the artwork. The artwork is absolutely amazing. Matthias Lopez on the coloring, Clayton Cowles on the lettering. And this does the impossible and brings everything to a very satisfying and emotionally resonant conclusion. This was really great stuff. There was a framing device in this whole series that I think ultimately by the end falls flat. I get the point Tom King's trying to make with that, but that wasn't necessary. I think that's a little too clever maybe for its own good. But at the core of this, just the story of a woman and her grandfather and trying to figure out who her father was. Really great stuff. Amazing artwork, an imaginative story, artistically, and of course, through the structure of the story. Helen of Windhorn, one of the greatest comics out there, period. I haven't even really thought about cover of the week. We're going to have to look at that in a minute. From Oni Press, we have Cala Pi. This one's okay. I wanted this one to be a little bit better, but it didn't. Like, the idea behind it, it's this detective, and I would spoil the whole thing if I told you what it was actually about. But I don't think it's worth checking out. It's about a detective who winds up dying. He's going to be a ghost or something. You can kind of tell that from the cover. Spoiler, sorry. It wasn't that good, though. It really wasn't. It was, like, jarring, disjointed. Though I did like the art. Sometimes it felt stiff. Other times it felt really cool. But you know what it does get? It gets the smell of the week. So, there you go. All right. From Mad Cave, I threw it on the ground. From Mad Cave, we got String, issue number 1. This is a book that has a really interesting concept. It's about this woman. She's working with the police because she can see strings between people. 2 types of strings. Blue strings between people that have slept together. So if like me and you had slept together, there'd be a string connecting us, a blue one, right? But if you had murdered me, there would be a black string between us. She can see these strings, and she wants to help the detectives and all that stuff. It's an interesting concept. Art was all right. The story, the pace of the story is fine. The flow and the structure, the dialogue. The dialogue to me just did not work in here. It just kind of felt off. And that's the only thing that kind of hindered my enjoyment of this book. Really cool concept, though. Interesting enough characters. That dialogue, though, the dialogue is pretty whack for me. Then we got Dark Empty Void, issue number 2. Feels like it's been a while since we had an issue of this. It's written by Zach Kaplan with artwork by Chris Sheehan, Francisco Segala on the coloring, and as well as Agnes Poza on the flatting, Justin Birch on the lettering. This book's awesome. This book's awesome. It's been a while since issue number 1. Did not matter. This is like, so one of my favorite just cheesy writers to read is Michael Crichton. I love Michael Crichton books. This feels like a Michael Crichton book. Like, it feels like a Michael Crichton book. Like, a team of scientists have to get together because of some mystery. In this case, the mystery is this black hole that opened up that's unstable, and somebody has come through that black hole. What? So now we got to investigate it, but everybody who's investigating it dies. So you got this team of scientists that have come together, and there's few of them have a personal relationship from the past that's problematic and troublesome. Sounds like Sphere. It sounds like a Michael Crichton book, but it's different than that. It's its own thing. Really great artwork, incredibly atmospheric and eerie at times, very smartly written, really great characters, really great dialogue. This is one of the best books this week. Dark Empty Void, issue number 2. If you ain't reading it, why? You should check it out. Then we got Huge Detective, issue number 2, or issue number 3 of Huge Detective. This is an interesting, like, murder mystery in a world in which there are regular people and giants. And the giants are called the Huge. And the Huge want to eat people, but they have this uneasy truce, right? And somebody's killing humans and giants, or there's a giant missing or something. And a giant and a human detective have to team up to solve this crime. It's a quirky book. It's got some really interesting, zany ideas. It doesn't maybe fully work at all times, or maybe it does. It's got this like subtle, surreal quality to it, this unease underneath the surface that I find very appealing to me. I like the concept. I like the story. I like the color choices in particular. It's pretty interesting stuff. Pretty interesting stuff. This book continues to fascinate me. So that's all I read. Now, I know that there's some Dynamite books out this week, but I like having them in my hand to show you, so we'll talk about those probably next week. Terminator number 2 is awesome. Space Ghost number 7, I think, is awesome. Johnny Quest number 3 or 4, that one was awesome. Barbarella number 2, that was pretty solid too. We'll talk more fully when I have those in my hand. So to recap, Huge Detective fascinates me. Dark Empty Void is one of the best comics on shelves this week. String, a lot going for it, but that dialogue really threw me off. Cala Pi, smell of the week. Other than that, just didn't work for me. Helen of Windhorn, nailed that ending. It's one of the best books of the year. Black Hammer Spiral City, even if you've never read Black Hammer, jump in there, check it out. Arcbound, sleeper hit of the week. This came out of nowhere, took me by surprise. That's some really great sci-fi, like mainstream popcorn type stuff there. Ultimate X-Men starting to really feel like an X-Men book. Uncanny X-Men, this is an X-Men book and I freaking love it. Amazing Spider-Man, I loved it more than I thought I would. And the same thing with Psylocke. I was really impressed with the Marvel books that I read this week. From DC, we had DC vs. Vampires World War V. This was a little bit of a lull issue. Gotham by Gaslight, Kryptonian Age. Issue number 6 was awesome, setting up the next miniseries. Batman Dark Age, it's the Allreds. You know how I feel. Green Lantern has been what Green Lantern's been. Action Comics has been smooth, even though it's weekly. Batman and Robin was pretty solid. Great artwork putting that one together. Then we got Black Lightning was Absolute Batman Noir Edition. Check out that Nick Dragata artwork. Come on, y'all. You got to check it out. Absolute Batman number 2 was Big Dumb Fun. Gigantic Moronic Splendor. Violator was a little bit cheesy for me, but I love the artwork. Precious Metal, another book that nailed the ending this week. Transformers do what Transformers do, which is be awesome. But yo, Joe, go Cobra. G.I. Joe number 1 makes the pick of the week because this is just a great opportunity for anybody to get in to G.I. Joe, even if you've never gotten into it, even if you've never cared, or even if you've been a long-time fan. It's here. It's worth it. We're ready. G.I. Joe. Anyway, that's what I read. That's what I thought. That's what I'm digging. What are you reading? What are you thinking? What are you digging? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. I've been Rockin Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading. Station. Pop, pop, boom.